elimination, which means we need to make the y's opposite. And if the x's become opposite, fabulous. If not, it's not a big deal. So this is kind of how I started mine. I'm going to bring it over here. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to rewrite it. I like to make sure I line up my like terms. Will you put your phone away, Ethan? So if you don't have one? Okay. So if I don't have anything that's a like x squared, I don't want to put anything under it, me personally. Otherwise, it looks messy to me. Okay, so our x's did cancel out, which is fine. How did you guys try to solve it from here? Did you do the factoring x? Is this what y'all did? What did I do? I did a factoring x. So this is kind of funny because there's no b. So our a times c is 6 and b is 0. Is there anything I can add to be 6, multiply to be 6 and add to be 0? No. And if you want to go try the quadratic equation, my guess is what's going to happen is you're going to have a negative for your determinant. So what does that mean? When we can't factor it, we get a negative under the square root symbol. Yes, this parabola and this line, there's nothing wrong with them. They just don't cross. So this one is no solution. And I did both ways. So if you kind of follow your work down, I had 0 plus or minus the square root of negative 24. So that was another hint to me. I did A, B, and C. I plugged them into the quadratic equation. So if you did that also, that's 0 plus or minus the square root of negative 24 over negative 6. There's no imaginary solutions in this lesson. Does that help on that one? Okay. We'll do any other way. He wants 20 and 21. Is there a specific one anyone else wants of those two? Yeah. Yes. Because I can't do all three of them. Or we won't have time for our lesson. Oh, this one has no solution too. Maybe was that just hard when there were no solutions? Let's look at what it looks like then. So you can answer it with confidence. So let's go through it again. Let's see what it looks like where you can 100% confident say no solution and not just feel like you did something wrong. So, Camden, how do I start these if I'm trying to eliminate? Divide by -1 times by -1. I just need my y's to be opposite, which affects all the other values in that equation. I like to line up my like terms. It helps me not make as many mistakes. So I've combined them I've eliminated my y's. I've only got one variable. But since we've got a quadratic, to find these two solutions, I would have to use, let's try to factor. So a times c is 2, b is -1. I couldn't think of anything that multiplied to be 2 and added to be -1. So I thought maybe this is no solution. If you're just not sure, like maybe I'm just not thinking of them, you can try the quadratic equation. And you don't have to even go the whole way necessarily. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. This is the part I'm most concerned about. If this ends up being a negative, it's going to be no solutions, imaginary solutions, which we're not doing right now. So -1 squared is 1, and negative times a negative times a negative is going to be minus. So it's almost certain that this is going to be negative. This is a lot happening. So it would be 1 plus or minus the square root of -7 over -4. Those are imaginary answers. But again, maybe you're more confident right here saying no solution. Maybe here you thought, maybe I just can't think of it. Maybe, right? Maybe you're questioning yourself here. You would not question that. Does that help on? Maybe that's just what the problem is. Yeah. 19 has a solution. Should we go through that one? Yeah, no, you're like, I want to see one that actually works. Is it negative 5x? I can't tell if I distributed it already. Who's paying attention? Tanner, why do I start this problem? I want to use elimination. I want to eliminate the y's, so how do I make them opposite? Yeah. And then we can add our equations together. Josh, what would be the best way to solve moving forward, in your opinion? There's more than one way that would work. I think the square. You can use the factoring x. Just remember that your b term is a 0. Or you can solve using square roots. It doesn't matter. You can use the quadratic equation. You should get the same exact answers for any of those three. So yeah, I can keep going on this one. So because there's an an equal sign, it could be a positive or a negative 4. X could have been 4 squared. X could have been negative 4 squared. We don't know. So we have to account for both. And then from here, we take x equals 4, x equals negative 4, and plug it back into the linear equation. So y equals negative 5x plus 9, and y equals negative 5x plus 9. Oh, I don't know why I wrote negative 20. I think I multiplied it in my head. And you would solve those out. So this is what it would look like if you'll have two solutions. We've done a couple of examples of what it would look like if it's imaginary solutions or no solutions. All right. We basically did all the elimination ones. Let's look at the answers for the substitution ones. Right there. 13, 14, 15, right? The solutions for 13 is 0, negative 5, and negative 3, negative 8. The solutions on 14 were, oh, there was one. Negative 1, negative 3. And 15 had no solution. It was one of those weird guys again. Did we do 19 and 20? Which one didn't I do on elimination? 21. Your solution, there's 1, is 1, 1. No? Why are you doing that? When I got to my factoring x, so if you're looking at your work, I had a 1 here and a negative 2. Is that what you had on your factoring x on 21? 8 times c was 1. Did you use quadratic? You completed the square? You were an overachiever. I'd have to come look and see where you went wrong. That is the most difficult method for solving on the planet. Yeah, I'd have to come look at that one. All right, any other questions? Okay, make sure your name's on your papers. Is this weird? We're handing in like an actual just notebook paper. This is what we used to do in the olden days all the time. All of our assignments were from the book for the most part. You have one? So the plan right now, today we're going to do substitution and elimination application problems. And then Monday is going to be a review, and Tuesday we'll take a quiz. It's not a full-blown test, but a quiz, because it's not very many lessons. And then we'll almost be to the end of the trimester, which is crazy. Have you guys all looked at who you have next trimester? You looked at your schedules? I teach different periods, so I have a lot of different kids in right now. Okay, we're still solving with substitution and elimination, and it's just, we're back to linear. We're not doing quadratics today. They're linear equations. The difference is you have to be able to write the equations. For some people, that is so easy for some reason. And for some people, it's so hard for some reason. And I don't know why. I've decided if it's hard for you, you are gifted in another area. I'm convinced of that. But some of us, it's just kind of difficult to come up with these answers. So I do not expect you to write, wait, where is it? Please be right here. Oh, good. I do not expect you to write these problems down. Like, I do want you to write notes on how you can come up with these equations. Okay? So if you're titling your notes, you're doing applications, still substitution and elimination. Substitution and elimination application. That's literally what we're doing. And I don't care which way you solve. The first three on the homework, they kind of want you to graph them. One of them, they give you a graph, but I don't, whichever way is easiest for you. Okay, so again, please don't write the whole problem down. Well, let's look at number one. Carlos, will you read number one to us? You need to decide what are your unknowns. What are you trying to find? What do you think, Josh? Yes, I'm trying to find the amount of adults. I'm trying to find the amount of children. And I think it's easier than doing X and Y. We know what they are. Let's just call it A and C. So give them variables that match the situation so you don't have to keep going back and saying, was X the children or was X the adults? Because you won't remember. Okay, so step number one, decide what your variables are. Give them appropriate variables, letters. That makes sense to you. Okay, from there, there's got to be two different sets of information that you're writing equations with. So I can see this is the number of people, and I can see that all of this information talks about the cost. That's one way that I try to break it up. Okay, so this particular one is a total of 680 people. Adults plus children equals 680. So maybe write that down. That's one equation. It's just the number of people. It has nothing to do with the cost. Lacey, will you read the, well, I kind of crossed off. Will you read this sentence to that period? There's two sentences, I guess. So the total, maybe that seems pretty obvious that that's a total. Any ideas on how I can use the $1 and $2? Yes.
Say 2C and 1A equals
Yes. So these are either going to be like an equation from the first sentence, an equation from the second sentence, or two separate ideas like number of people and cost. Yes. Holly? $1 for children. Yes. Thank you, Peyton. She probably said that. I just write things down wrong sometimes. Okay. From here, you can solve it however you want. So Eliza, if I gave you the choice, would you use elimination or substitution? Sure. So then you might need to go back and look at your notes because this was from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but maybe we would make all of these, multiply this by negative, right? Combine. So this is the part I'm hoping is a review. These cancel out. Oh, they're not even lined up. Those cancel out. That's hard to subtract upside down. I think so. Plug it back in and you would find the number of children. Raise your hand if you want us to go through solving. Do you need help with that? We'll do a couple like that. We'll solve through the next one. We'll solve through all the way. But again, if I'm trying to solve through, I plug this back into the first equation. So 370 plus children is 680. So these are the steps from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that we worked on. We're just coming up with our own equations. That's the new part. That's the extension. Okay. Any questions on that one? Again, I can already tell by the look in your eyes that some of you just naturally are good at these, and others just, it's not a natural thing. It's very difficult. Do you have a question? We'll do a few more, and then if you have some questions, we'll come up. Adelaide, will you read number 2? Pedro? As you read through this, Ian, what are the 2 variables? What are the 2 things we're trying to find? Say it again. Oh, sorry, on number 2. Yes on number 1. For who? We want to find Pedro. We want to find Ricky's hits. Those are the variables. And again, I would not call them X and Y. That gets confusing. Who is X, Pedro or Ricky? Okay, this one does not have 2 different situations. Do you see that? It's got Pedro and Ricky, and it's got totals and then a second sentence. So let's stick with this first bit of information. Together, they have 2,668 hits. What does together mean? What is the math operation that brings numbers together? Do you all know this? Hopefully. That's what the first sentence is telling us. Look at the second sentence. See if you can come up with a separate equation from this. Pedro had 278 more hits than Ricky. See if you can break that apart and make an equation out of it. Pedro had 278 more hits than Ricky. Yes. More than Ricky, though. So what does more than Ricky mean in math? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So plus Ricky. You got to finish that sentence. Yes. Now you can decide how you want to solve them. Compare with your neighbors. See if you guys are coming up with this second equation. Pedro had P equals. Pedro had P equals. And then what does it mean? 278 more hits than Ricky. We're looking at math symbols. Say it again.
Can I get this by 2 and then whatever number I get, just add that?
Try it. There's more than one way to do it. Hayden, what did you get for your second equation? Pedro had. These are hard sometimes, aren't they? I'll start you out. Pedro had. What do I do for 278 more hits than Ricky? And Ricky is R, so how do I do that other part in this math sentence? If you did minus, you would have to have Pedro minus 278 equals Ricky. There is a minus 1, there is a plus 1. Pedro had 278 more hits than Ricky. So if you take Ricky's, you add 278, you're going to get Pedro. Does that kind of make sense? Sometimes I want to go from right to left. Okay, how would I solve this? It's your choice. Allie, how do you want to solve this one? Substitution or elimination? Which one makes the most sense? Yeah, because we already have the P alone. So instead of writing P, we're going to substitute it into the other one. This is the part that you should be like, oh yeah, we did this on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. So solve this the rest of the way down. Combine your like terms. Yeah. Yep, so the first R came from this, so I substituted it in for the p, and the second r came from here. And we're substituting. So you can combine those. So solve the rest of the way through. Solve the way through. See if you can find Pedro's hits and Ricky's hits, and then see if your neighbor found the same ones as you. I was betting on that we were all really good at this part, so I hope that's true. I don't know. Writing equations, we may not be good at that yet. All right, compare with your neighbor. This is the part where we can't be shy. If your neighbor is ignoring you, just put your paper over on their desk a little bit. Payne, did you do it? Did Jim Bergen get the same answers? They're going to be big numbers. These are thousands of hits. These are good baseball players.
No, I'm not doing How do you know like which equation you plug that back into?
It doesn't matter. We chose this one because it was already had the p by itself. We chose elimination because these were already almost opposites.
So would it still work if I would have plugged that r into that?
If you were to subtract p from both sides and eliminate the, or excuse me, isolate the r, so you had r equals 2,668 minus p. Yes, you can plug it into that r, and you would get the same answer.
So when I get this, like, is it because I used that one, so I plug it back in?
You could plug it back into either one.
Even if I, so
Uh-huh.
let's say that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because it's a system of equations. The only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to, how can I explain this? You don't want to plug it into its own equation, or you'll get weird things. Like if I plug this in for this side and I just have the same thing equaling itself. Okay, what did you guys get for Ricky? How many hits did he have? Wait, what did you have?
1,100.
You guys say it with confidence. I want to hear you.
1,195.
There we go. He feels confident now. Then you would take this and you would pick, it doesn't matter which equation you plug it into. If you plug it into this one, you're doing 1,195 plus the 278 to get you Pedro. How many does Pedro have? 1,400? Did your way work, Jesus? We don't have time, actually, but we love your way. We believe it's good. Okay, let's look at number 3. I keep picking on the same people. Carly. Is that your name? Oh my gosh, I doubted myself. Will you read number 3? This is like number 1. Please see if you can write 2 equations that would go along with this. What are your 2 variables? You definitely have 2 separate pieces of information, number of people and costs. So see if you can use example number 1 as a guide. I'm sorry if these come very difficult to you. I will keep trying to give enough examples that you can be confident, but I might just have to help as you start your assignment. It's just okay. Is this hard? Sorry, I went right behind you. I want to be like, who's having a hard time writing equations? But guess what? People don't raise their hand when you ask that question. They're like, I am not. All right, Ethan, give me one equation that you came up with. I'll start it out. These are hard for you. What are the two things we're trying to figure out? How many kids went and how many adults? So there's 45 total people there. What would I add together? And they're going to be variables. But what are our variables again? Children and adults. You started to say 5. Why don't we put the 5s in this equation? This is not our money equation. You want, if there's two separate things going on, keep your money stuff together. There's a problem with calories and minutes. Keep your calories in one equation, keep your minutes in one equation. Keep the cost in one equation and the number, just pretty consistent. So I know I've got 185. Emery, what would I do? What's going to equal 185? And this is where the costs are going to come in. Yes. All I can think is just to keep doing a couple more. And again, you would solve this however you want. You could subtract C on both sides and then substitute everything in for the A and distribute and solve, right? Or you could make opposite coefficients. You could multiply everything here by -3 and add them together. Moving forward, it's your choice. This is the new part. We don't have any with money, so I'm going to skip that 4. So I think that one's very unique. Shopping. Let's see which one I want to do. Marine biologists? Okay. Devin, will you read the marine biologist problem?
Marine biologists studied the length of 2 species of sharks for several months. The Greenland shark had an initial length of 37 centimeters and grew 0.2
Oh, I like this one.
centimeters per month. The spiny dogfish shark had an initial length of 22 centimeters and grew 1.5 centimeters per month. After how many months are they the same length? What is the length?
This one might be easier to graph. They're giving us 2 linear equations. You guys seen it? They gave us initial length and the rate. They're giving us y equals mx plus b. Okay, so the Greenland shark has an initial length. This is the y-intercept. So you might want to graph one that's like this. You get to choose graphing, elimination, substitution. And it grew. So this is my slope-intercept form, but they're usually backwards in real-life situations. Davis, can you help me write the equation for the spiny dogfish shark? What is its initial length? And we're just going to put, you can put m if you want, but these look like y equals mx plus b to me. So I would graph these and see where they cross. That's how I would do this one. Okay, there's a couple problems on your homework that talk about area and perimeter. And then I'm going to have you guys get started. I feel like we went over the homework a little longer than my other class. If you're finding the area, you do length times width. And it doesn't matter which one's the length or the width. You just multiply the 2 dimensions together. For perimeter, you do length plus width plus width. If you don't know those, you need them for the homework. Otherwise, it's so confusing. So I'll do an example. And I'll leave this up on the board. So if this asks me to write an equation for the area, I would write 2x times x plus 4. That's my equation. I'm doing length times width. It doesn't, and if you switch them, it doesn't matter. You could also simplify that Oh, we won't have any like that though. None of ours end up with x squared. That was a bad example. Perimeter would be 2x. This is also a 2x. It's a rectangle. So if it asks you for the formula for the perimeter, it's 2x plus 2x plus x plus 4 plus x plus 4. I think that the computer is okay if you leave it like that. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6x. This is not supposed to be squared, so I'm going to give you a second equation to see what to do. I would say I'll leave it on the board. I'm not going to the next slide. So there's a problem like this on your homework, and then they give you a graph, and they just want you to graph it. It's y equals mx plus b. You'll graph it and see where they cross. It was just weird enough that I wanted to make sure I reviewed these two equations, so make sure you have that written down. Okay, the homework's on big ideas. Go grab it. If you get stuck on number 1, I will help you. Application, yeah.